Welcome back to another episode of Tank Talks. On this week's episode, we welcome the co-founder and CEO of Boulevard, Matt Danna, to discuss how he is disrupting the beauty and wellness industry with vertical SaaS. Matt shares how his obsession with creating things as a child led him down the path of being a product-focused leader when he joined his first startup, Fullscreen, and how the nagging of his co-founder's unwillingness to get a haircut led him to his next startup, Boulevard. Matt shares how he initially researched the problems facing operators in the industry and what kind of research hacks Matt and his co-founder implemented in order to get as much insight from their future customers as possible, even before launching their first MVP. We cover why Matt and his co-founder decided to liquidate their retirement accounts to bootstrap the business for the first year, and why he delayed hiring a sales team until they had product market fit. Finally, Matt and I discuss how he was able to eventually raise over $100 million in funding and keep the business afloat during COVID when all of his customers were being forced to shut down. Now let's jump into the tank for this week's episode with Matt Danna from Boulevard. Thanks for joining us in the tank today, Matt.
Thanks so much for being here. Also, Matt.
I know, very confusing, but super excited to have you in the tank today to learn more about your journey in building one of the biggest platforms supporting the beauty and wellness industry. But before we jump right in, it would be great if you can give our audience a brief background on yourself and how you made your way into the tech and startup industry.
Absolutely. Young age, always been interested in technology, but also art at the same time. And so have been a left brainer, right brainer type my whole life. Ended up, trying to figure out which college to go to based on do I go for computer science or do I go for graphic design? Ended up doing both, essentially. Turned computer science into what I wanted to do for my career, but then also was able to, keep up with design for hobby. And those two things have been interwoven into my whole life and my entire career. And so I've always been focused on building technology for creative individuals, so artists and creators, and started with visual artists and then helped YouTube creators monetize on YouTube before they could monetize directly. And now I'm helping artists very much in the personal care space grow their business. And so really big fan of that. And technology is so fun to just be able to write some code and ship value immediately. And it's so addicting that I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my life.
Now, I love that left brain, right brain overlap that you described. It sounds like, your passion for creating creative things and building great products has always been the driving force behind everything you've done in your career. But where do you think that passion comes from? And how have you been able to evolve as a product leader over the years? Did it come from, your parents or just siblings or anyone you were surrounding yourself with to think about building great creative products?
My parents and siblings are fantastic, but they're not in tech at all. My dad's a police officer. My mom's a nurse. My sister's also a nurse. So my dad has this, he always asks me, when are we building our next app? And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. I get a lot of gratification from just providing value from folks, and especially those that aren't able to build that value themselves. We don't have salon owners that are building software. Just being able to show them what's possible with technology and blow their minds. I find that so gratifying and so exciting. It just fuels me to come to work every day.
So growing up, around a police officer and medical nursing family, the passion for building products was just something that was innate in your own DNA that just came out, I guess, early on?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's crazy.
I think my parents think I'm a freak. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, your last startup that I believe was called Fullscreen was focused on supporting YouTube creators before there was this YouTube creator kind of platform where you were the VP of product. And that's where you found your recent co-founder of Boulevard. Can you tell us about the story about how you and your co-founder, George, were inspired to consider the beauty and wellness industry as potentially a problem to solve?
So George was our founder of Fullscreen, but Sean is actually my co-founder. So he was the VP of engineering. And the story behind Boulevard was that there was a week where his hair was just a complete disaster. And we were working on a project, and I ended up, making fun of him like a good colleague does. And like, dude, your hair is a disaster. Go get a haircut. And he said he kept forgetting to call his salon to make an appointment during the day. And at night, when he remembered, the salon was closed. And we were just, pontificating about why that is the problem. In this day and age, why do you have to make phone calls to book appointments? It's so inconvenient, and didn't understand why there was that friction. And we're the total millennials and us were like, they'd make so much more money if like they just figured out how to make their businesses more accessible.
There's got to be an app for that, as most millennials will say.
Yeah, exactly. There has to be. And we didn't find any good answers. Like we couldn't find an app. We were looking for like an open table for appointments app. Didn't exist. And like if you go to any of the businesses that do help you look and feel your best, generally the call to action is to call. And sometimes they'll have like a web form where you can submit an email and maybe hear back. We got particularly curious about that problem to the point where we were getting brunch this one weekend, and we were right nearby. There's a few salons and a spa, and we ended up walking in and asking them a bunch of questions. We said that we were UCLA students working on a research project, and asked them how they handle appointment scheduling. And we were like expecting that they'd all be on pen and paper, but that wasn't the case at all. They were all on technology. And what blew our minds even more was that they were on technology that was capable of online booking. But when asking them, do you use that? They would resoundingly say, no, like we can't use that. It hurts our business. Like we'd get this like emotionally charged response back. And like my co-founder and I, we were like, scratching our head. We're like, what is going on there? Like there's something very powerful, just like this with them. They feel like the response was like very emotionally triggered. And so something powerful, we're like, not sure if it's like a technology problem or if it's like a user error type of problem. So we went and talked to many, many more businesses over the course of a few weekends. And ultimately what we ended up learning was that when you call to make an appointment, the front desk is doing yield optimization essentially in real time. And so they're looking to see like, who are you? Have you been at the business before? If so, what service did you get? Who were they with? How long exactly did those services take? They're looking to see, are you on time? If not, they're going to give you a fake start time. It's called trick booking. If you've no-showed in the past, they're going to put you at the end of the day so they can dismiss the hourly wage staff early. And most importantly, they're looking to see when they can double and triple book you so they can be working with multiple clients at once. And they're making sure there's no gaps between appointments. All this logic was happening in real time in their brain while you're on a call. And you can experience this firsthand because they'll ask you what kind of time of day or day of week would you like to come in, but they're not asking you like what specific time would you like to come in. They're saying, can you come in at 11:15 or whatever? And that's because they're picking ideal spots to place you on the calendar. All of the solutions and current technology that was available to the market and the online booking features that they had no business logic on top of the calendar. All of them kind of work like Calendly, where it's like grab any time on my calendar. And that would end up like really hurting their revenue significantly. And it's material because these businesses are 5% profit margin. Is the average salon profit margin is 5%. So we did the rough math, basically took every stylist as a unit. And if a single stylist had more than 45 minutes of downtime in a single day, that unit was negative for the day. So it's like very, very high stakes. They really can't have more than 45 minutes of waste or non-productive time in the day, separate from breaks and that kind of stuff. We're like, this is super high stakes. Like, I don't know how these businesses are able to actually stay profitable. In computer science terms, like this is like a packing algorithm. Like they needed knapsack packing to figure out how to like best pack the calendar with the constraints that are given. And that's when we kind of were like, okay, we can build this.
Well, I mean, so many questions. I mean, first off, all these logics that you kind of were able to unravel feels like kind of taking one elastic off a big elastic ball and just being a huge mountain of other ones to kind of sift through. But, you see salons and you see beauty, parlors or everywhere in the US, anywhere you look in every plaza, hearing you say they operate on 5% margins is really shocking to me. I thought that these things would be way more profitable, even though they're not so busy. But, being labeled as a career product guy obviously is an awesome thing to have, but it also makes you very cautious when deciding to work on your next big product idea, obviously for the fear of potentially building a product that somebody may never use or the market may never need it. So how did you initially validate all these different things about the space you were looking at to really understand there was a market here that had a bigger problem than just what you initially sought out for, which was like simple bookings, which was being offered for free? And what should our listeners understand were some of the hacks you did to get in the door, besides faking being UCLA students?
Yeah, highly recommend taking the student approach. It's extremely disarming. Everyone wants to help a student. So the way that we validated it was we literally we went door to door and we talked to these businesses. When we were doing this research and discovery, we were also validating this was a problem that they would pay to solve. Got a ton of validation. Folks asking us if you know of anything, let us know. We'd love to try it out. When we actually had a product, we just went back to those same people. We're like, hey, we built something. Can we get your feedback on it? People were so excited. It was awesome. And it just felt like from that point on, the product was being pulled out of us.
Yeah, it sounds like, one, pretending you're a student obviously breaks down barriers and, takes down the fear of you being told no because you're not selling anything. And then two, creating a list of people who were willing to talk to you as student researchers and saying, hey, we actually built something. Do you mind testing it without even selling it again? But I heard also in the early days, you actually offered to volunteer at the front desk of local hair salons to learn how they operate. I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, so the businesses that said yes, we're in, we would go and work for a week or two before we launched them to make sure that we fully understood their unique workflows as a business, because each one of these businesses operate a little bit differently, and we wanted to make sure we weren't going to create any gaps or unfulfilled needs that they had when launching them, because our platform is a rip and replace. You can't really have two scheduling systems at once. There needs to be one source of truth. One day you're on the previous solution, the next day you're cut over to Boulevard. And so we really wanted to make sure end to end we were buttoned up. We'd launch and then we'd work for a week or two, basically until they told us to leave. They're like, we got this, you can go now. And that was just really, really profound and very much foundational to the product that we have today.
I mean, that's some serious customer onboarding support.
Yes, it is. It is. And I think you have to do those things that don't scale in the early days, right? The amount of insights that we learned and a lot of the features that we built, we were never asked to build, but we saw through direct observation how the workflows could be improved. And so a tangible example of this, we're working at a very, very busy salon in Beverly Hills. They have about 60 staff, generally 35 to 40 at any given time. And their calendar is the craziest Tetris board of all these colors and everything. I was I don't know how you guys can handle this. And so you're supposed to know who's coming in next, right? And then who's going to be leaving because you need to prep the ticket. And if they wanted to upsell products, have that all ready to go. And so they were literally holding up a ruler to their calendar to try to figure out okay, who's coming in and who's leaving next. And we're this is baffling. How are you doing this? And so we ended up creating just a Kanban style view of the calendar, which we call our front desk view, which is here's everyone that's confirmed. Here's everyone that's arrived, but not yet being serviced. Who's in the chair? And then which is whoever's in the chair. And we sorted that by who's going to be leaving next, the end time of the appointment. So all these appointments, take a different amount of time. And so then you just drag them over to checkout. Everyone, even to this day, we'll demo that feature. Our prospects will say, that's cute. We won't use that. And then we'll ask them, how's that feature working out for you? A couple weeks after, we don't know how we live without this. So I think it's listening to your market, but also really truly understanding what the problem is that you're trying to solve.
Totally. I mean, I just pictured the front desk person holding up one of those big yellow rulers, blocking out obviously a couple rows below so that doesn't confuse them, and just seeing where everyone is at that current time slot. You can think about this across so many different scheduling businesses, dental offices, doctors' offices, chiropractors, wherever. They're just overbooked and they're obviously understaffed. But I mean, just hearing you say, we weren't trying to build anything or sell anything until we really understood the problem. And the only way for us to understand the problem was sitting there and researching and watching how these people operate, which, unfortunately, a lot of people in the software world can't do all the time. Yours is a real world business here. So you could go to a physical location, sit there and watch them, do their task. But, what were some of the other big aha moments you discovered during your research period that allowed you to eventually get this thing off the ground?
Like when we launched our MVP, basically smart scheduling, we ended up seeing that there was actually increased amount of no-shows for appointments. And for whatever reason, people that, book online have a lower, because probably they have to do less work to actually book the appointment. So like they have a higher propensity to no-show, and which we don't want to do because, these businesses are then losing a lot of money. And so we started capturing credit card info at the time of booking, which all of our customers were like, no, like they'll never, like clients will never book an appointment online if like you have to add their credit card details. And we challenged them, like, let's try it out. And we did, and that eliminated no-shows. It turned it from like a sizable problem to zero problem. And that alone, just capturing credit cards, let alone like, yes, we could charge them if they no-showed or whatever, but just capturing the credit card was a really, really important step. Show of commitment that they intend to arrive at for that appointment. That's basically how we ended up falling into FinTech, because clients would arrive and they're like, I already gave my credit card online, like I already paid, or like there was this confusion around like, did they pay or was it just a credit card authorization? And like ultimately our customers were asking, hey, the card's already on file, you guys have it, like can we just check them out through Boulevard? And we're like, yeah, like building a point of sale shouldn't be too hard. Turns out point of sales are very hard. But years later in hindsight, that was, we created a point of sale, and now the majority of our revenue is actually from merchant processing.
Well, I mean, we'll get into that in a moment, but talking about those sort of initial MVP launch, how did you know you were ready to launch your initial MVP with that calendar product? And then how did you think about sort of layering more stuff or releasing more stuff quickly so that you could do a full rip and replace? Because I'm assuming no one was going to do a full rip and replace just on a calendar feature.
Right. No, absolutely. The whole playbook with vertical software is that you need to be an all-in-one solution, that especially in the SMB space, they really want as much of, like, they don't want a tech stack, right? Like they just want a single provider. The validation that we received was really, really profound. What we ended up just seeing was like the excitement in their eyes when like we had like our proof of concepts, and really, really validated that like it's something that they would pay for, that they found this very helpful, that they could anticipate it working. There was, of course, the folks that were saying, oh, this online booking will never work for my business. And like, we just use that as fuel. Like that gave us like, this fire in our belly. We're like, well, we want to show you that we can help the front desk just be so much more productive. So they can focus on like greeting guests and upselling them on products and like basically the hospitality aspect of the front desk, and not just like this calling, scheduling aspect. And so like, it was really, you could see it in their eyes, and like, you could hear the excitement and like the curse words that they're saying. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like at that point, we're like, we knew we had something. And then it was just a matter of, what are the other things we need to build in order to properly serve this customer.
I love that. Just being there, physically seeing that reaction to something that you created and you built, probably reminded you of your days, when you had to create sort of fun things for people you worked at on the YouTube side of things. And that feeling never really goes away, but I want to go back to the beginning, because I heard it took you 9 months to get your first real customer, and you funded the business initially with your own 401ks and bootstrapped it. I mean, what was that experience like? And how did you even recruit your first few employees to join your mission with not a lot of capital?
When we received all this validation, we did quit our jobs. We did liquidate our 401ks. We went all in. It was like a scary move. My family thought I was nuts. They're like, you're leaving this like great job. You're an executive. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I just see this problem that I couldn't unsee. From there, we had to before we quit our jobs, we had all this validation, right? That this was going to be a viable solution, had our like kind of proof of concept. And so when we left, we did take about 9 months to work up to like being production ready. And that just involved a ton of heads down design work and programming, to build our MVP. And it was a slog. Like it took a lot of stuff. You had to build a lot of things in order to be able to displace a customer off, or a previous solution that was an incumbent in the market. It wasn't sexy. We were full on ramen noodles style. Like my parents, as I mentioned, like our I come from humble beginnings, right? I didn't have like a massive nest egg or anything to live on. And so just, we were as scrappy as possible, lived like college students and really, knuckle down on trying to provide as much value as quickly as possible.
So those were your first few employees, were like college students?
So a couple of our first employees, we found actually on GitHub, because we were using a couple of their open source projects. And we emailed them. One was a college student. Another one was a pre-seasoned engineer living in Finland. And so approached both of them and we're like, hey, like, would you be open to doing some contract work? So we paid them as 1099s contractors for until we raised like our first round of friends and family.
Wow. And how long was after the first 401k kind of withdrawals did you get that friends and family capital?
It was about a year.
So a year bootstrapping it really with your own capital.
Yeah. And like the friends and family that comes in like breadcrumbs, and it's mostly friends. So my family isn't in a place to do that. Former colleagues were really, really helpful, just believed in us and, had those conversations of like, okay, like if this goes to nothing, like you're not going to disown me, right? And so, no, it was awesome though. So about a year after, we had a couple paying customers, we had enough proof points to show like, and to feel responsible that we were giving their money a good home. We raised friends and family for about another year, and then we went and raised joined an accelerator.
Right. But I also heard that you stayed stealth for almost 3 years before publicly launching your product. And you didn't really hire any sales members in the beginning at all. I mean, what was the thinking behind that? And what advice would you give to other founders at that early stage, considering doing the same, like liquidating the retirement accounts, raising just friends and family, and not hiring salespeople and just doing all the work themselves or with like 1099 contractors?
We didn't actually announce ourselves for 3 years because we had a pipeline of customers that were ready to sign up as soon as we had like enough of the features to support them. So we just thought that building out a full go-to-market function was going to be a distraction from what we thought was the most important, which was product development. So yeah, it was about a year after we closed our seed round, actually, that we announced ourselves as like a startup, but we were stealth until then. And I think it's, when doing a startup, one, you got to like be obsessed about the value you want to create. Like we were so fueled by solving this problem that seemingly like we were the only ones that saw this as a problem. So like that really fueled us. And like, I'd probably not recommend to like liquidate in 401ks. Like it seems, irresponsible, but in our case, I don't know what we were thinking. Actually, I just think we were like, we have to do this and kind of at all costs, really, and use that to hire these contractors and help us move faster.
Yeah. The best advice is don't ask for advice because you know what it's going to be. So just do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But the delaying of hiring salespeople, I really like that thought process you went through. For our companies at Ripple, we invest at the very early stages too. Usually you first check in at the pre-seed, 250, 500K or whatever. And we tell our founders, like, don't do any sales hires because you don't have a go-to-market strategy figured out. You don't have the proper onboarding for a salesperson. And the founder-led sales is the best way to learn about the problem you're solving first so that you're building the right product for that problem to solve it, which is obviously what worked out for you. But it also worked out exceptionally well because Boulevard now has more than 25,000 professionals on your platform and power more than 2,000 salons, med spas, and other self-care businesses. So, how are you able to evolve the business, as you said, from a traditional SaaS platform into a certified payments facilitator and FinTech company? And what were some of the biggest challenges, as you mentioned earlier, faced during those years of trying to transition to a FinTech company?
A lot of questions there to unpack, but the waited to hire sellers until we had some type of repeatable motion. To your point, like founder sales is highly effective. People want to buy into the story, buy into the mission. You learn an incredible amount. And I think as a founder, you need to be really thoughtful about what you are outsourcing at any given time, even to like another leader. I didn't want to outsource that for the longest time because I was just learning so much and kind of, iterating so much on both the product as well as kind of how we positioned it, how we talked about it. And didn't feel all that comfortable to bring in folks to own that until I really mastered it myself, which was like honestly completely out of my comfort zone as like an engineer, learning sales, how to talk about pricing and stuff like that to prospects. I think it was all about, really looking at the market and what our customers are telling us, and then sequencing the way that we build product and where we choose to invest as a business, really on like whatever our customer is asking us for. So that's how we got into the fintech space, and we are now a payment facilitator. So we've eliminated as many middlemen as possible on the payment supply chain.
It sounds like you really waited until you were being pulled by customers, which is the best, a definition of product market fit for something that you hadn't even really built yet. Now, when you went down that vertical fintech path, did you hire consultants? Did you think about outsourcing everything? Did you know you wanted to build it in-house from scratch? A lot of people say they're a fintech company, but really they're kind of slapping together a bunch of third-party products to be a fintech company. You didn't seem to want to do that. So how did you navigate the fintech journey?
Oh, we definitely did.
Yeah,
we definitely did in the early days. It makes no sense to be a payment facilitator early on. There's really great platforms that you can write some code and start using their payments functionality within the same day.
Besides Stripe, would there be any ones you recommend people who are thinking about it check out?
I think that Stripe is the one to use as an early stage startup. For us, Stripe was actually prohibitively expensive because credit cards in person have a much lower rate. People aren't going to sign up with us and pay 3%. That's like a non-starter. So at a certain point, Stripe's pricing really blocked our progress, and we had not much of a choice but to become our own master merchant and PayFac. So that was a very strategic, calculated decision that we made right after our Series A. We had enough team. I went and hired an expert to lead our fintech strategy. We saw that like we could make a significant margin, and it would more than double basically what we were making on software, and thought that was a worthwhile investment to make. And at the scale at the time, it made sense. And to this day, it's a really great investment.
I mean, there's a reason why, Stripe is as valuable as it is because there's a lot of money in payment processing still, and being your own merchant obviously is where you can collect the most of it. But I got to ask, given the fact that you operate in the real world with software, but with real world merchants and customers, you must have had to deal with the impacts of COVID shutdown and having to help your customers survive. So how did you help your customers kind of navigate and survive during the COVID shutdowns? And what new products kind of came about because of the shutdown that were impacting those businesses that are still alive today and helping the company drive revenue moving forward?
Yeah, COVID was a scary time for us, obviously. It's a very scary time for our customers. Basically, overnight, we saw all of our businesses shut down, and we had to go into this triage mode because they needed to like bulk cancel all future appointments. And like we didn't have that feature.
Why would you want that feature?
Yeah, exactly. And so we were all hands on deck to help them every step of the way. And so whether it was canceling all their future appointments or it was helping them reopen in a safe way, like we created a feature for the COVID waivers and
screening and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. We invested a lot in our gift card functionality. Gift cards actually are not too common in like hair salons, for instance. They became way more popular during COVID. Built some gift cards, enhanced our wait list functionality so that could support like a walk-in type, or people could social distance. And so really just, again, was listening to the market, listening to our customers and determining what we needed to build.
Yeah, I love the fact that there are things that were being demanded of you in a very short period of time that were probably never on your product roadmap, but were necessary to just keep your customers happy. That obviously created these more aha moments of, wait, you know what? This could actually be something that our business could use one day, like a gift card creation tool or like an instant communication channel with mass distribution of like loyalty or promotional stuff that these salons are going to use now when times are good, but when times are bad, they can also use it for updating their customers on, hey, maybe there's a fire alarm that's going off and every appointment needs to be canceled that day. Those are one-off things, but it's a nice thing to have that was created by your team when times were obviously a struggle. So obviously it worked out because the company has scaled rapidly since those early days. You've raised over 100 million from top tier firms like Box Group, Index Ventures, Point72, and Bonfire. I mean, how have you been able to scale so rapidly, and how have you been able to stick to your vision as more capital is poured into the business?
Listening to podcasts from founders before I was a founder myself, it seems like all these startups are, overnight successes. Sean and I have been at this for 8 years. It's been a long slog. If I'm being honest, it's been a lot of work, a lot of brute force. We've earned essentially our scale. It wasn't given to us. We didn't rely on luck to earn it. And so it was just a lot of hard work, and still every day, despite, having raised all that venture capital. Just means you have more expectations. So I think a lot of that has just been being really, really thoughtful, being customer obsessed, being product driven, and just being able to build the type of company that you want to be an employee of.
Yeah, no, for sure. And everyone takes the headlines in TechCrunch and sees the $100 million raised and thinks, oh, wow, that happened overnight. But you and I both know these things take 5, 10 plus years before any real success, in your opinion, is validated. So I appreciate you sharing that. I got to ask, what's the long-term vision for Boulevard, and how should people connect with you and your team if they're interested in working together?
Yeah, absolutely. So long-term vision is that we really want to make a dent in consumer purchase behavior. Today, Boulevard is very much a B2B business, but we're going to be looking to be a little bit more consumer facing. We built Boulevard, back when we were looking for an open table of appointments. That was where we initially had started. And we hope that we can get back to that. And we just took a more capital efficient detour along the way to provide a lot of value to these businesses in the meantime. Anyone interested can learn more about our company and to check out our job site is joinboulevard.com. You can learn all about the company, watch some videos about what we're up to, and learn more about the team.
I love that because my barbershop is still using pen and paper and a ruler. And there's been several times I've walked in and there's like 3 people showing up for the same appointment. And the guy just looks at us and says, well, wait around, we'll figure it out. And there's not a lot of there's 2 unhappy people and 1 happy person in the chair. So I hope one day they figure out how to use something like Boulevard. But before we wrap things up, we always like to ask our guests for their fast favorites. So first off, your favorite podcast.
Favorite podcast? I'd have to say Assassins is up there. Really, really great show.
What's that one about?
Startup life.
Nice. All right, we'll have to check it out. Favorite newsletter or blog?
I'd say SaaSter. I've read that for so many years and continue to do so. It's just high quality content, super relevant.
Always a classic. Next is your favorite tech gadget?
I mean, I have to say the AirPods. they transformed my life.
Still an oldie, but a goodie. Absolutely. My wife always says, are you listening to something? And I was like, no. She's like, then why are you wearing the AirPods? I'm like, it just rests there. It's just a part of the body now, which is probably not healthy in the long term, but it is comforting. Favorite new trend?
People freaking out about AI. It's incredible to see the backlash. And it's like, people are surprised, like it's something new. And it's like, we knew this was coming all along. So people are just freaking out. And that it's been funny to observe. Yeah,
it's interesting when you say like freaking out. I think what you're referring to is like, it's not like this is the first time we've seen AI or heard about it, but it's now like impacting day-to-day like lives. I say when a parent sees their kid doing their homework with AI, then they start to freak out.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Like when the parent is doing their job with AI, it's totally sweet.
Exactly.
And that's where I think we're getting to the point here now. That's funny.
It's so much more accessible now, right? And like people are like, oh God, like this is problematic.
Right. Well, it's not behind the scenes, behind the computer anymore. It's now at the face of the computer. It's like, hey, it's got the interface now where people are like, oh, this is real. I can touch it. Whereas before, if it was all behind the scenes in the code, you would never even thought twice about it. And next is your favorite book.
Favorite book? Hard Things About Hard Things, I think, right now. It's something that like it's a very cliche book. Read it several times, but like I reread it again because especially in this macro environment, like things are super hard, right? And so just going back and reminding yourself, no matter how much VC you raise or how big or how successful you're perceived to be as a company, it's still hard.
It's a good level setting book to always have on the side of your night table when you need it for a pick me up when things are hard and you need someone to like kind of share your struggles with that come around obviously every so often these days. And last but not least, your favorite life lesson.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier, but like, don't rely on luck. You have to manufacture your own luck. It's not given to you. You have to earn it.
That's fantastic advice. And thanks so much for joining us in the tank today with co-founder and CEO of Boulevard, Matt Danna.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Tank Talks. To learn more about this episode, be sure to go to Apple Podcast or Spotify to find more detailed notes on this episode or to check out previous episodes. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and a rating as it helps us out a lot. And hit that subscribe button so you can get notified when new episodes come out. Finally, make sure to give me a follow on Twitter @MattyBCohen or @Tank Talk Podcast to stay up to date on new episodes or to be a guest on our show. Till next time,